7 or gray balance. If the profile's in there, you have the data you need and you understand what my expectations are. It also feeds soft proofing. The one piece that I'm going to point to a little bit is the pre-flight Gint work group, gwg.org. It has all the pre-flight settings that we need for packaging, for commercial print, for newsprint. You don't have to invent your own. You can download them. They work in most any software, and it will assure that you've got all the components you need in your file to pass it on through the supply chain. Proofing. When we make proofs, if the proof does not have this bar on it, either a 2-row or a 3-row, that's very clearly defined by ISO, it's not a proof, it's a pretty picture. Along with having that control bar on there, I need to know what printing condition it was made to. So I need the profile that that proof was created for, so I can verify that proof. What we're trying to do with supply chain partners and standards is create tools through the whole supply chain to where I make proofs, I put the color bar on it, I measure it, I'm responsible for the proof. If you're the printer, you pull the data out of the data set, you print to it, you hit your numbers. Everybody's got responsibilities, and ICC's almost the glue that communicates all of our expectations through the supply chain. Printing standards. We have a lot of them. ISO 12647 was created back before we had ICC profiles. So it's all been based off solid values, lab values today, and off TBI values in the midtones. But as we look at these standards, Part 2 is defined with TBI, Part 3 is TBI, actually Part 2 is TBI or a data set, Part 3 is TBI only, Part 4 is TBI only, Part 5, Part 6, Part 7, and Part 8 are all done with characterization data. So we have to have the profile information. All of these parts recommend you should communicate with PDFX. PDFX requires having an ICC profile inside of it. For workflows, TS 10128, and Ellie's going to go into this a little bit more, it gives you a procedure to take your customer's expectations, either use TBI curves, use near neutral calibration, similar to G7, or use ICC links or conversions to match your customer's expectation. Some of the best printers I've been to in the world can take files in from Japan, from Europe, from the US, literally from anywhere, and in pre-press they convert the files. The press operator always runs the machine the same way, and the files were prepared in advance to fit that machine. So they were converted from the customer's expectations to the press color specs. We've got tools in place that really align what we do as a supply chain, and a lot of what I try and teach is communication. When we all talk the same way and do this the same way, we get predictable results. Now this is where I live most of the time, is in the packaging world. And just a quick question here. Which one of these components is most important? Is it the corrugated box, the label on the bottle, the signage? They're all what we call brand identity and the promise from the brand that my stuff is really good. It's what gets you to pay $20 for that bottle instead of $5 for the bottle that doesn't have a label on it. It's all critical, but one's done digital, one's done corrugated flexo, one's done UV, offset. There's a lot of different printing processes that we combine, even down to the injection molding that we have on a lot of our display. Having the correct color in there is critical, or people walk away from it. William alluded to it a little bit, but in the packaging world, those packages that sit on the shelf, the brand owner can be charged for wasting shelf space, and Walmart's the worst one at that. You had this stuff in here, nobody bought it. You owe me for taking up my shelf space. When they take it and the manufacturer doesn't want it back. So when they throw it away, they charge the consumer products company almost the same price they would have charged retail for that product. So it's huge to a consumer products company that all my stuff looks the same, and if we're not using the same lighting and the same instrument and the same tools through the supply chain, we don't have a consistent product. Does that go up or down? Oh, okay. CGAS 21 and ISO 15339 is a new series of standards. They define a workflow of how to, for common appearance, if I'm printing newsprint or if I'm printing sheet fed coated or digital signage, it makes a similar appearance through the supply chain. It does say that you can use any characterization data set. However, it does have 7 characterization data sets that are attached to it. The neat thing in these data sets, the hue angle is aligned. So our yellows are all same hue, magentas are the same hue, cyans are the same hue, except for the uncoated paper, and then that one swaps off a little bit. These are all built with near neutral calibration. So from paper to midtone, they all look the same. It's a lot of the same methodology that's built inside of the ICC workflows to keep the tone value the same through the process. So using one of these data sets, I could print newsprint or I could print signage on a wide gamut device, and I'm going to have a common appearance. And again, I kind of hit that data preparation. The standard says you should use one of these 7 data sets, but if the sender and receiver agree that we can use FOGRA 39, FOGRA 51, whatever we want to use, we can use it as long as you have that communication back and forth. As a printer, you should know how your systems print. The way these data sets work is this would be newsprint. This is improved newsprint, which we see around a lot of the world where everybody's doing color on every page. This is wide gamut, which is bigger than sheet fed coated. Any 3 of these really fit real well together. When you take that one and stick it next to the newsprint, you obviously see a difference. But the neutrals are the same, the colors are the same. My apple's a lot more saturated down on CRPC 7 than it is on 1. But the overall appearance is correct, and they can all be printed with the same file. CXF is the color exchange format. It was a product that was built so we could pass spot color data back and forth into our proofing machines. There's 4 parts to that standard. The one I'm really going to focus on is part 4, which is spot color characterization. Part 1 is the core resource with all the data from your instrument. Part 2 is scanner targets. Part 3 is output targets, so I can pass characterization data into Heidelberg, Monaco, Graytag, whichever software I wanted to use. Without it in a PDF, we get different results because there's no way to define the rotation of the inks in a PDF or the transparency. There's places for it, but it doesn't do it. CXF allows us to pass that. It's a printed tint ramp to the standard of 11 patches over white and over black. The text file comes in and delivers information that we need for ink formulation, for process control on the press, and for proofing. It can be imported into Illustrator and then exported, used in your palettes, exported back out into a PDFX, and then it feeds my proofing system. It allows me to change in my workflow the rotation of the colors so I can put the metal I'm printing on bottom for the first time and see an accurate preview of it. It feeds ink formulation system. So if you use a different ink brand, most of the pigments are very similar around the world, you can match my ink expectations anywhere that you want to print the word. We can drop it now with PDFs into some of the new tools, and it sets up your tolerancing. So it has the customer's expectations built into the CXF data, and I use it now in my process control to make sure I've used the correct ingredients. A lot of what I prints on presses that are part flexo, offset, gravure, screen, digital, it's not uncommon to have machines that do all the components. All the requirements are communicated inside the ICC profile for CMYK, and the spot color is carried in the CXF. The thing that we're going to go into today that gets neat is we begged for this from the packaging side to ICC, and they listened and built what we wanted. I can take 4 CXF colors and throw them into an ICC profile, just those tint ramps, and I can look at it and say, this is how this red, green, blue, yellow ink is going to print. I can put my image in there and say, these aren't enough colors, I'm going to have to add another color. So it's really some of the most powerful stuff that we've built, where we've taken this XML format and now we can feed that back into ICC profiles. Process control, Ellie's going to walk through this, but this is a new standard that we've built or are building, and it defines everything that I just talked about, from viewing instruments all the way through looking at our eyes, how we monitor color for both process, commercial print, and for packaging print. Defines the color, how the workflow and the transformations get done, and then how you validate conformance of it. I think the last thing that I wanted to touch on here is one of the standards, most all the standards that we've written allow you to do hand measurement with your device, and the requirements you measure 6 out of 10, so you can, or 7 out of 10. So you have 68% assurance that it was correct. You have 1 standard deviation, but brand owners want 99% approval. They don't want to see 6 out of 10 packages right. This is where we've really got to start looking as an industry in the packaging side of doing 100% measurement. And I think this is really one of the keys that as we move ahead into the industry, we need to look at putting in our printing machines so we can be more confident of what we're doing and feed the information back to the buyers. When we have this full communication chain, you will get more work in printing, you'll be more efficient because you're doing process control. Everybody makes more money when we use the right tools and do it the correct way. And I think that's what I just said there. So, Ellie, oh, damn, I went over 29 seconds. I owe you a beer. Thank you all so much for your time, and if you have any questions, we'll be here all day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Steve. That was a wonderful talk. Just hand that to me. Don't blast me in the eye, please. I'll go blind. The pads that are going around, right now are for your questions. So what we're going to do is, rather than do question and answer at the end of each talk, go up onto the podium. I'm going to ask if you have a question for a speaker, please write down the name of the speaker or speakers. Write down your question, maybe jot down your name so we can find you again. And we're going to have one big question and answer session right at the end of the day. We'll take as long as we need, and we'll have all speakers come up here and answer your questions and have a dialogue with you. Before we continue, though, I'd like to extend a big hand of thanks first to Steve Smiley once again. And if everyone could please also give a round of applause to thank our platinum sponsor, Konica Minolta. Konica Minolta is one of our platinum sponsor. They're one of our sponsors without whom this event would not be possible. Our next speaker is Greg Winstill. Greg Winstill is someone I've known for some time now as well. I was reading through his bio. He's the product manager for QuadTech SpectralCam and AccuCam color management and control systems. But I was reading his bio, and I was like, as a 34-year veteran, and it was reminding me of the fact that I still remember the days when I started, and I could easily find people that had been in the industry longer than I'd been alive on the face of the planet. That's no longer the case, unfortunately. So Greg has an extensive press and pre-press background. He was with Quad Graphics for 15 years, and he brings that experience to us to the design of his machines at QuadTech. And let's give a round of applause for Greg Winstill.
Thank you. So again, as William mentioned, I want to talk to you today about the ROI of automating color management on press for specifically packaging printers, but this can apply to commercial presses and newspaper presses as well. So the three topics I want to talk about is color workflow, contrast what is typically happening today versus, as Steve referenced, automating the collection of color measurement press side, which is inline color measurement, and then get into the details of the ROI. As Steve indicated, standardizing your process leads to consistency and repeatability, which equals savings of dollars. So when we look at color management expectations, the brand owners want consistent color worldwide. They also want 100% of their product to conform, ideally, no matter where it's sitting on a shelf in the US, in India, or somewhere in Asia Pacific, that color is exactly the same. And they also want some proof from the printers that in fact that production did meet their expectations, and that comes in the form of color quality reports. When we look at what printers want, they want real-time color quality assessment so that they know that every foot or meter of that material that is being produced